I didn't start doing wildlife photography thinking it would be easy. But maybe I didn't realize just how difficult it is. But the rewards are endless. Now, I'm no expert, but today I'm going to talk about some of the struggles I faced and a few of the tips that I found along the way that can help. And a lot of people will tell you the first tip of wildlife photography is patience. But I think there's more to it than that. So I'll start with what I call the 3 P's of wildlife photography. Patience, perseverance, and persistence. Patience, of course, is the first one. It's the first tip you're going to get almost from every wildlife photographer. Is be patient. A lot of people are going to tell you to get closer to the wildlife. And even if you have a really long lens, sometimes you just can't get close enough. So maybe getting closer, to me, is not the best advice. You don't want to chase the wildlife. You don't want to scare the wildlife. And you definitely don't want to harass the wildlife. To me, being patient is letting the wildlife come to you. Now, perseverance. How is that any different from patience? Perseverance is when your patience runs out and you're about ready to give up. The second day I was shooting the Belted Kingfisher. She didn't stick around very long, and I waited for quite a while for her to come back, and she never did. And honestly, I was ready to give up. But I persevered, and I stayed, and I waited. And that's when I saw the green heron. Now, I was as patient as I could be. My patience was about to run out, and I wanted to leave. But I persevered, and I stuck around, and I was rewarded. The longer you stay at your location, the better you'll get to know your environment and the animals that live there. Now, persistence is knowing about what you want to find. And once you find a good location, go back, and go back often. The more you go, the higher the chance is that you'll find what you want. But try to find different spots in the one location to observe from. Is that it? Now, definitely one of the biggest struggles I have is not being ready. There have been a few times where I was either walking to a site or driving to and from a site and I saw something interesting and I didn't have my camera gear ready. I can't tell you how many times whether I was ready or not. As soon as I got an animal in frame, it took off. Twice recently, once with a hawk and once with an owl. I wasn't ready, but I got everything set up. And as soon as I was set up, they were gone. With the owl, I had the wrong lens on, and I actually did get a few shots of it, which weren't very good. I think I actually did show you one. But it waited for about 3 minutes. Maybe not that long, but it felt like forever. It waited for a few minutes, and then as soon as I got him in frame, he flew off, and I didn't even get to pull the trigger. Now with the hawks, I actually drove by and saw 2 in a tree, and I had to drive quite a ways down the road before I could turn around and go back. And I parked a good distance away. Now in this case, I wanted to take video, so I got my tripod out. But with the drive and setting up the tripod, they probably waited for about 5 or 10 minutes. And the second I got them in frame, they took off. And I swear, as soon as they took off, they laughed at me. I thought we were friends. No matter how ready you think you are, things happen fast. And get used to the fact that you're probably going to miss the shot. But it's all about practice. Birds in flight, for example, can be very difficult if you're not ready. Sometimes you have to be ready to change your settings at a moment's notice. Or light willing, you can keep your shutter speed fast enough so you'll be ready when the inevitable happens. Shooting white birds has been difficult to say the least, but luckily I've had many opportunities thanks to the Great Egret. I have learned that whether stationary or in flight, it's best to use your exposure compensation to keep from blowing out the highlights of the white birds. Lowering it by about 2/3 of a stop is about the only way to get the details in the feathers of white birds. Of course, there's always the different meterings you can use, but as I said before, I'm no expert, so I'm not going to go into that just yet. After hundreds of shots and so many pictures with blown out highlights, I finally got a few decent shots of the Great Egret in flight. But then, of course, 2 days later, I missed it again. Back button focusing is great for wildlife photography. Also, you want to use burst mode, especially if you're photographing anything moving or anything in flight, especially if you want to catch something like the kingfisher diving. I was actually able to change some of the settings on my camera, and it actually allowed me to use the touch screen to change my focal points. Now, if I am photographing a great egret or another bird, I can use single point focus while it's stationary, but I can actually just swipe on my touch screen to change it to group focusing if it all of a sudden takes off. So I think one of the most important things I've learned in my struggles so far is just to enjoy yourself. You're not always going to get the shot. Majority of the time you're going to miss the shot. If you can't find your subject, just look around and I guarantee you'll find something else amazing. Just always remember that it's about the journey. It's about the experience. It's about being out there with nature in all of her glorious beauty. And that is more important than any picture. Until next time, what's in your backyard?